Hello and welcome to the TBT guide on stripping the Weihrauch hw95 air rifle. This guide covers the hw95, the hw98, the hw99, 50 and 57. Basically all of the HW range that have the 4 metal lugs holding the trigger block in. The first thing you need to do is remove the barrel, which I've already done. I've left it here just to show you this shim. There are 2 of these in there, very easy to lose, very easy to damage. Keep an eye on them, place them to one side once removed. The next thing we need to do is remove the trigger unit. It's held in by these 2 pins here, which can be pushed through with a hammer and a punch. Support the cylinder underneath, take a punch, just tap them through. Now, this one comes apart quite easy. It's been apart a few times before. If you've got a new rifle, it may be quite tough and it may need pushing or hitting with a hammer quite hard. When you take out the trigger, keep hold of the safety catch because that's actually spring loaded in there. Just move those to one side. And you don't want that pinging across the room where you can't find it. So, one very small spring, one safety catch. Again, put them safely to one side. The next thing are the metal lugs themselves. They're just push fit in there and they can be pushed through from the inside with, I've got a special tool here, it's an old bent Allen key that I've shortened. That can be pushed up inside of there, levered on the other side, and they'll actually push them through like that, if they're loose. If it's not quite so loose, you can use a screwdriver as leverage behind, push it through that way. And if they're very tight, you can actually now, once you've done one side, push that all the way through, and then just tap it through with a hammer. Being careful not to lose it. Put all 4 of those safely to one side. The next thing we need to do, all the pressure now is being held by this metal lug in this little recess here. So we need to take the pressure off, twist it like a bayonet fitting, and then leave the pressure to go out. It's advisable, I must say, to use a clamp, sash clamp, something like that at this stage. This gun has come in for a service. I've already stripped it, I've already degreased it, so I know there's not much preload in there. So I'm going to do it by hand, but it would be advisable to do it with a clamp. I'm just going to remove the cocking shoe from there. Take a small washer, so we can put that on there, just to take the preload of the spring. You can see there, that's how much preload there is, so I'm able to push down. I know I've got the spring under control. Move that around to the side, then gently ease it off. The trigger block comes out. Be aware that this nut is just a floating nut, it can fall out, so make sure you don't lose that. Next, the spring and the spring guide can come out. Then we can remove the piston. As I said, this is coming for a service, so I've already degreased it, I've already looked at it, I've already polished the piston, ready for reassembly. But it came into me because it was making a lot of noise, recoiling and wasn't grouping. Weihrauch sometimes put weights and washers into the piston to add preload and add weight to get the gun up to power instead of putting the right spring in. When I took the piston apart for cleaning, this is what I found inside. 1 big thick weight and 4 thick steel washers. that'll be half of the reason why the gun wasn't firing very nicely. We'll put those to one side because we won't need them. The other reason I don't think it was firing so well is the spring itself. When I took it off the guide, well actually this end was in the piston, the spring snapped. At some point in the past the spring has snapped. The gun's been continued to be used. As you can see, it's actually bent over the spring at the end there. It would have been all kinds of horrible using this gun. So that's going to one side as well. Normally on service, I fit one of my TBT guide sets in. They're factory fitted for the factory spring, easing the recoil, reducing twang, things like that. In this case, because the spring's broken, we need something more. So I've got my TBT Maxi guide set here, which is the same set, or similar guides to in the standard one, with the weights, with the the preload washers, the slip washer, the grease, the instructions, etc. But this time I'm actually producing them made to measure on a Weihrauch original spring. So this is an actual Weihrauch factory hw95 spring. Designed for the UK market, 16 joules, it is the right one for the gun. So, to fit one of these kits, the first thing we need to do is get the slip washer, which is this one here. These are preload washers, we won't need those until we've checked the power. The first thing is we get all of the plastics and we put them into the piston without the spring. Like that. Now that fits just nicely onto the skirt of the piston. That means all the weights have gone out of there, everything's perfect, everything's lovely. If I'd been unable to get all of the weights out, it would be sitting up like that, so I'd know there was either still something to look for, or if I'd taken it apart and there were no weights, the guide would need shortening by a few mil until it sat like that. So, that's that done. Now we refit the guides back into the spring. Doesn't really matter which end they go into. If you do find a difference in the fit on the end of the spring, go for the one where the rear guide feels the best. So we've already got our slip washer down inside of there, and now we need some grease. Each kit comes with molybdenum grease in this little packet. And we just need a small smear on the front of there, and a little bit to go inside the hole so it lubricates the latch rod. Turning it as it goes down. And that's it. Now, some people like to grease the spring. This is perfect if that's what you want to do. I actually don't. I try and leave it as dry as possible because that reduces the chance of dieseling, increases the consistency, therefore the accuracy. You can put a small amount just in a couple of places there, so when the spring's compressed it just greases up the contact areas. As for lubrication of the piston itself, again you can use this one, but I also produce the TBT tin bum slide or bum slide, which is a high molybdenum content paste. Much higher content of the molybdenum crystals themselves than this one. It feels almost gritty to the touch because it's a very powdery paste. Now if you're using this, just a very small amount is needed around the skirt of the piston. Think Mr. Miyagi, wipe on, wipe off. And then the same around the front of the piston. And the smallest amount just around the edge of the seal. We don't want any of the lubricant to get in front of the seal because that's what causes dieseling. Okay, so there we go. Now that is introduced back into the compression tube. The cocking shoe itself, just what you got on your finger there, just rub some of that onto there, just to give that ease of movement along that line there. And then, well, it's just a case really now of reassembling in reverse order, using the washer that we had on the floor to take the pressure, push that outside and get it located into there. I would suggest, while you're testing the gun for power, just pop 2 of those back in at diagonals. It will keep the gun safe for you to check it. It means you don't have to take out 4 each time. When you're refitting the trigger, it's always easiest if you actually push that down. That's cocked the trigger there. So push that down before fitting it, then you're not fighting against the spring pressure. And once it's reassembled, you need to run it over a chronograph. If it needs extra power, then we have these preload washers which can go over the guide at the back. That'll increase the power. Alternatively, if it's running a little bit too close to the limit, or maybe even just a tad over, the spring can be shortened, and if you see my other video called Spring Tips, it'll show you how to do that safely. And that's it really. Thank you very much for watching the video. Hope you found it useful. Thank you.